It started with a routine traffic stop. At least, that's what the officer thought. Middle of the afternoon, quiet street, and a black sedan parked slightly over the line. He walked up to the driver's window with the usual attitude, firm, no nonsense, ready to flex his authority. Inside sat a woman, calm, composed, dressed sharp but low-key. She handed over her license without a word. He barely looked at it. Something about her presence rubbed him the wrong way. Maybe it was her tone, or the way she didn't flinch under pressure. So, instead of letting her go with a warning, he pushed harder. Claiming she was being uncooperative, he escalated. Before long, she was in cuffs, being dragged into court on a list of minor charges that didn't quite add up. The courtroom was quiet when she walked in, still calm, still composed. But this time, standing tall before the judge, she wasn't just any defendant. She was the Chief Federal Prosecutor, one of the most powerful legal figures in the state. The room shifted instantly. The judge raised an eyebrow. The clerk whispered something under their breath, and the officer, his face went pale. In less than 5 minutes, the entire situation flipped. But the real shock came not just from who she was, but what she did next. What happens when the law is turned back on those who misuse it? And how do you clean up a mess that was never supposed to happen? The real story was just beginning. The Chief Federal Prosecutor, Angela Matthews, wasn't someone people crossed lightly. Known for her sharp mind and unwavering commitment to justice, she had built her reputation over decades. She was the kind of person who fought cases that others wouldn't touch, always pushing for truth no matter the obstacles. But today, she found herself on the other side of the courtroom, facing accusations that didn't make sense. The officer, Officer Daniels, was a newer addition to the force, young, eager, and still learning the ropes. His previous record showed a few complaints about impatience and overstepping boundaries, but nothing serious enough to derail his career. This incident, however, was quickly becoming the biggest mistake of his life. He had acted without proper verification, assuming the woman was just another citizen resisting authority. Back outside the courtroom, whispers started to spread. How could someone so high up in the justice system be caught in such a predicament? Some wondered if this was a simple mix-up, while others suspected something more sinister. Was this an intentional sit-up or a symptom of deeper corruption? Angela's calm demeanor suggested she had been through far worse, but this was personal. The charges were baseless, but the damage to her reputation could be lasting if she didn't act fast. As the judge called for order, everyone waited to see how this unprecedented situation would unfold. Officer Daniels realized that this wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. It was about trust, power, and the fine line between justice and abuse. As the courtroom murmured, Angela's attorney quietly began to dissect the officer's report. Every detail seemed off, wrong times, missing evidence, and inconsistencies that couldn't be ignored. It quickly became clear that this was no ordinary mistake. Rumors started swirling about possible pressure within the police department to push through arrests, boosting numbers without regard for who was actually involved. Some whispered about internal politics. Was Officer Daniels a scapegoat? Or was there someone else pulling strings behind the scenes? Meanwhile, Officer Daniels sat frozen, the weight of the situation settling in. His career was on the line, but more than that, he felt trapped in a system that demanded results, sometimes at the cost of fairness. He wasn't sure if he had been set up, or if his own impatience had caused this disaster. The thought gnawed at him. How had he missed the signs? Why hadn't he verified her identity before making such a serious move? Outside the courtroom, the media had already caught wind of the story. Headlines questioned the competence of law enforcement and the fragile balance of power in the justice system. Some viewed Angela Matthews as a victim of overreach, while others saw the incident as proof that no one was above the law, not even the prosecutors. As the trial moved forward, it became clear that this was about more than a traffic stop gone wrong. It was about accountability, trust, and the hidden fractures in the system designed to protect all citizens. And for Angela, proving her innocence was only the beginning. Days passed, and the courtroom became a battleground for more than just a simple case. Angela sat with quiet confidence, but behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Officer Daniel's defense team began digging into her past, trying to find anything to discredit her, anything to turn the tables. They questioned her decisions as a prosecutor, suggesting bias or misuse of power. It was a tactic to shift attention away from his mistakes, but the courtroom could feel the tension rising with every word. At the same time, whispers started about secret meetings between police officials and local politicians. Could this incident have been a setup to send a message to the powerful, or was it a desperate attempt to cover up bigger problems within the force? Angela's allies in the legal community rallied quietly, but the public was growing restless, demanding answers. The media coverage painted the case as a symbol of deeper corruption and abuse of authority, and it wasn't just Angela's reputation on the line anymore, it was the trust in the entire justice system. Officer Daniels, once confident and sure of his actions, now appeared increasingly unsure. Every cross-examination chipped away at his story. His hesitation was palpable. He knew the truth was slipping through his fingers, but admitting the full truth could cost him everything. As the judge prepared to hear final arguments, the room held its breath. No one knew what to expect next. Then, just before the judge called the court to order, a surprise witness was announced, someone who claimed to have crucial evidence that could change everything. The courtroom door creaked open, and all eyes turned to the newcomer, a mid-level detective from the police department, someone neither side expected. He carried a thick folder, his expression serious, almost nervous. The judge nodded for him to proceed. The detective revealed that he had uncovered internal emails and messages revealing a deliberate plan to target Angela Matthews. It wasn't just a simple traffic stop gone wrong. Someone had orchestrated the entire event to discredit her and shake her influence within the federal system. The tension in the room skyrocketed. Whispers turned into gasps. The emails suggested that certain high-ranking officials within the police department were involved in a covert scheme to manipulate cases and silence powerful figures who threatened their interests. Officer Daniels appeared blindsided. He was only following orders, caught in a dangerous web he never fully understood. Angela's calm facade cracked for a moment, but she quickly regained control. This revelation flipped the entire case on its head. Suddenly, the story wasn't about a cop making a mistake. It was about corruption at the highest levels, abuse of power, and a system that could be weaponized against anyone, even the Chief Federal Prosecutor. The judge called for a recess, the courtroom buzzing with anticipation. Outside, reporters scrambled to get every detail. For Angela, the battle had just become much bigger and more personal. The real fight for justice was only beginning, and everyone knew the fallout could change everything about law enforcement and the legal system forever. When the court reconvened, the mood was electric. The detective laid out the evidence clearly, emails, messages, and recorded conversations exposing a conspiracy within the police department aimed at undermining Angela Matthews. The judge listened intently, eyes narrowing as the scope of corruption unfolded. Officer Daniels, once the main defendant, now looked like a pawn in a much bigger game, his orders coming from shadows far beyond his control. Angela stood firm, her voice steady as she addressed the courtroom. She wasn't just clearing her name anymore, she was demanding accountability. The judge announced immediate investigations into the implicated officials, promising justice beyond this courtroom. The weight of the truth settled like a heavy fog, finally lifting the cloud that had hung over Angela and the community. But just as everyone thought the case was closing, the final twist hit. The prosecutor's assistant stepped forward, handing the judge a sealed envelope. Inside was a confession from an anonymous whistleblower, someone even closer to Angela than anyone realized. The note revealed that the plot went deeper, implicating a trusted advisor within her own office, someone feeding information to the corrupt faction in the police. The room fell silent. Angela's eyes locked on the envelope, her expression unreadable. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about betrayal, trust, and how far some would go to protect their secrets. The battle for truth wasn't over. It was just entering a darker, more dangerous chapter. After the courtroom emptied, Angela sat alone in her office, the weight of the day settling in. The case had exposed layers of corruption she never expected, and the betrayal from within her own team cut deeper than any outside attack. But she knew this was the price of standing up for justice. The whistleblower's confession opened a new path for investigations, and she was determined to see it through, no matter how difficult. Officer Daniels faced disciplinary action, but it was clear he was more a victim than a villain. The real focus shifted to the corrupt officials and the advisor who had betrayed Angela's trust. Slowly, the system began to heal as honest people stepped forward, inspired by the courage it took to challenge wrongdoing. Angela's reputation not only survived, it grew stronger, a symbol of resilience and integrity in a complicated world. The story became a reminder that justice isn't always simple or clean. Sometimes, the biggest battles are fought behind closed doors, and the truth can come from the most unexpected places. For Angela, the lesson was clear: trust must be earned, and vigilance is constant. As she looked out her office window, she felt ready for whatever came next. The fight for justice never ends, but with the truth on her side, she was ready to face it head-on. The courtroom drama had ended, but the journey to reform and transparency was just beginning. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life courtroom stories and unexpected twists.